What is it?
It's time to go back.
Welcome.
Hey there, welcome back to Generation S. It's a podcast about growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s. I'm Dan Kemp, and today I am joined by a very special guest. She is the host of the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast, all about growing up in the 90s, Ms. Amy Lewis. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for letting me come onto your show. This is very exciting, and this is one of the best things about being a podcaster is meeting other fellow podcasters who are, nerds for their childhood, and so that's it's just great to connect.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is, guys, this is part 2 of our little collaboration. So I actually was on your show last week, or I guess it might have come out just a couple days ago. Anyway, it was, So in that episode, we talked all about Nickelodeon game shows and sports and stuff like that, which if you're a listener of this podcast, we covered that pretty extensively back in January. So I was super excited to talk about that again.
Yes, that was a great episode, by the way.
Oh, I loved it. I had a great time with you, which is why we're talking here. So today, we were messaging back and forth on what are some other things we could legit talk about. And I think I don't know how it came up. It was on my list already, but I was like, well, what do you have any memories or thoughts on Disney movies or Disney Channel original movies? Because that's what we're covering today. And you were like, absolutely. And so you were throwing out a few titles that you remember. So I was like, perfect, let's do it. So that's what we're covering today. We're not covering all of them because I think they're even still making them. I don't know. I haven't watched the Disney Channel in decades, but
yes, there's an obscene number of Disney Channel original movies. It's out of control.
It's insane. So, but we're going to basically, we're only going to probably go deep on a couple of them that I and you have memories of. But I'll probably give you a list of the first 25 that came out because I use ChatGPT. If y'all are familiar, it's a fantastic tool to help you organize your life, really. But I said, give me a list of all the Disney Channel original movies that came out from the beginning until the early 2000s. And so it stopped at 2003 and it gave me 44 movies. So we are not going to talk about 44 movies. I'm not even going to list all 44 that it gave me here because that's just, I feel like I would be rambling. But I will give you, we'll talk about a handful and then I'll list off a handful that may have, if you're listening to this and, it might trigger something for you because there's certainly ones that I forgot existed just looking at this list and I never saw them, but I certainly remember seeing commercials for them because that was one. I will say this about the Disney Channel is they did a very good job about advertising their own content on their channel, right? And I feel like that's pretty common for most channels, but I remember some of these commercials vividly.
Yes, once they went to commercials, which was very disappointing because I'm old enough that I remember when Disney Channel had no commercials, which was amazing. However, being able to promote their other movies and becoming aware of stuff certainly was helpful.
And that was, I'm trying to think, because I remember when we first got, it wasn't cable, we had satellite, right? This because I lived in a very rural part of upstate New York. By the way, I'm sorry I have to go on this tangent real quick. I do want to give a shout out to one of our biggest fans, Ashley. She's been a good friend of mine for about 15 years now, and she's done an amazing job championing this podcast to her friends and just everyone she knows.
Isn't that the best when you just have so many people encouraging you? It's so motivating.
Yeah. She is amazing. So, and I promised her, I said, listen, if you can get 10 people to listen to this next episode, I will shout you out on the show. And true to my word, I want to give her a big shout out because she is amazing. Thank you, Ashley. Seriously. So I appreciate you listening and spreading the word. And I'm glad you're enjoying the show because she always gives great feedback. Every time I put out an episode, she messages me on Facebook and is like, I love this. This was great. So it's always fantastic. So anyway, sorry about that tangent. I just had to shout out Ashley before I forgot because it's very important.
Yeah,
but,
definitely.
as I was saying, I grew up in a very rural town, so we had satellite, but we had the Disney Channel, and when I first started watching it, I remember there were no commercials, like you said. I'd be watching an episode of Rescue Rangers, and it would go from oh no, are they going to fall off the cliff? It would be a typical commercial break, and then it fades to black. You're like, okay, commercial time, and they bring you right back to the show, and you're like, what? What just happened? Now, these days, kids watching Netflix or whatever, you don't know what I'm talking about. You don't have commercials. Maybe YouTube ads, but that's different.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was it, like 98, 99 that they started doing commercials, or was it earlier? Do you remember?
I think it was probably thereabouts. Yeah, I would say mid to late 90s, because it was an additional above and beyond sort of basic cable. So in the 80s, you could get the Disney Channel was extra and HBO was extra. So it was certainly very nice to not have commercials. But, I think at least for the Disney Channel's sake, their commercials, especially at that time, were mostly just promo stuff like you're talking about for their other TV shows or other movies. It wasn't necessarily super distracting commercials like on network TV.
Right. Well, and it's funny because, again, a lot of people may not remember this, but cable was invented to, like, the whole idea of getting cable back in the day was that you didn't have to pay for commercials because they made their money off of subscriptions to cable.
Right.
Which didn't last very long, because once they realized people would keep cable and still watch commercials, that was it, because that happened. It's happening now. You know what I mean? We've got all these streaming services out there that are now just incorporating ads into maybe cheaper tiers of their subscriptions, but you're still paying money and watching commercials.
Right.
So it's not going to go away anytime soon.
No, definitely not.
Honestly, it's funny, like, looking back, like, I don't mind commercials. Like, I'll say this, like, I can put up with commercials as long as it's not like the same commercial every break where, like, okay, by the end of it, I'm going to punch my TV. Like, if they had a variety, I didn't mind them. You know what I mean? It was kind of a good break, because then you can get up, go to the bathroom, get a bite to eat, whatever, and then come back. You didn't miss anything. So
yeah, I agree. And I think during my childhood, I grew up in the Chicagoland area, so there was a lot of Chicagoland relevant commercials that I distinctly remember, and I can sing the jingles, and I know where I can purchase a fur coat if I, so choose, if I'd like to get a mink coat, because I remember that there's Adriana furs. So I think that there was certainly something timeless and memorable about a lot of the commercials that remind me of my childhood, or commercials for Dimetap and Robitussin, if you had a cold. So I think I am kind of have some slight emotional attachment to commercials. It's kind of sad. I don't know. I mean, I get it. Like, I'm very aware that it's kind of weird that we are, but to me, they're just as much as part of the program we watched back then as the shows themselves, right? I mean, yeah, definitely.
Have you ever gone on YouTube and just looked up like a block of 80s commercials and just see what you remember? Like,
yes,
everyone
absolutely.
does it,
Yeah.
They get millions of views. That's if I want views for
nostalgia.
A YouTube channel, I'll throw up old commercials, because I guarantee you I'll get thousands of views, because that's what people do. They want to watch these old commercials, and it takes you back even more than the shows sometimes. Like, it's because you see them even less.
Yeah, they're very locked in time and very relevant, and I've definitely incorporated many clips of commercials into episodes of my podcast. So
absolutely. Well, listen, and that's something I totally forgot, is I wanted to start things off by giving you a chance to talk about your podcast. So, so the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast, you've actually been out for 3 years now, I think, right?
Yeah, so just over 3 years. I think, like a lot of people, coincidentally just started a podcast during the pandemic, but it was something that has been sort of on my radar of things that I wanted to do for a long time. I've been a very avid podcast listener for probably 10 to 15 years at this point. Started off listening to a lot of Disney World podcasts, because I'm a big Disney nerd. But I decided to start a podcast in May of 2020 as a way to sort of remember my sister, who sadly passed away in March of 2019. She was a teacher, hilarious, an artist, our family historian. She remembered everything from when we were little kids. She was a really amazing, compassionate human being who unfortunately really struggled with some significant mental health issues, and unfortunately lost her battle to those issues, which was, of course, awful. However, I wanted to sort of think of some way to deal with that grief in a way that was productive, healthy, and helped me focus on good parts of our relationship and our growing up together, because she was my best friend, and we watched movies together, we watched TV together, we played with toys together, everything possible that you can think of. We were pretty close in age and into a lot of the same stuff and into a lot of the same music. So I thought, what better way to recognize her and remember her, and by looking through and looking back at stuff that we were into as kids and teenagers. So that's kind of how my show got started. So every episode has some component of her sort of tied into it, whether it's a band that she liked. So I did a show about Nirvana. I'm wearing my Notorious B.I.G. shirt. One of my early episodes was on him and his story, which is pretty incredible. So she sort of inspires each of my episodes, but it's a very positive, try to be uplifting, funny show, just taking a look back at stuff. And it's been incredibly therapeutic in many ways. And it's allowed me to meet so many amazing people, which I just did not anticipate or expect at all. I thought I'd just be sitting in the corner of my bedroom talking to myself, but I've connected with so many encouraging, supportive people like yourself and other podcasters that are just very encouraging and listeners that are very encouraging. So it's been a pretty amazing 3.5 years, and I'm still enjoying it and loving it. I get excited about every time I record and look forward to it. Look forward to meeting other people, being guests on other shows or having people on my shows, and just all reminiscing about how amazing this period of time was for all of us for different reasons. But for me, it's very much tied to my sister, but in a really good, positive way.
Yeah.
So that was a long answer. So thank you for your patience.
No, that's great. I just feel so bad because, that's probably the purest reason to start a podcast. And here I am, I don't know, I like to talk, and that's about it, really.
I would challenge you in that, because I think that you are very passionate about your childhood, which is around the same time as mine, know, and that's what people always say is, if you're going to start a podcast, you have to do it about something that you're passionate about. So you're, clearly very passionate about your childhood and all the things that you experienced and watched and that you're now showing to your kids, which is pretty awesome. And I am very passionate about that too. And on top of that, I will talk about my sister for, until I can't talk anymore. So, I think we're both in it for the right reasons. And, that's why I think people like us, our paths sort of cross, because we're both, sincerely into covering the information and sharing the information that we are. Might be for slightly different reasons, but our hearts are in the right place. So,
well, and I know I've said this on the podcast before in the last 50 episodes, but nostalgia is, I heard this somewhere, I can't remember where, but it's like the happiest form of sadness you can have, right? And it comes.
That is a great way to describe it. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I love that idea of being able to just talk about something and trigger that memory in someone's head that they totally forgot about, right? I guarantee you, I'm going to list off a movie here in a little bit that, you're going to forget you saw, not you necessarily, Amy, but just the listeners. Sure. And oh my God, totally remember that. And all of a sudden they're thinking of the commercials or the actors in it or whatever. So
absolutely.
That's the idea of not just mine, not just yours, all these nostalgia podcasts. You know what I mean? That's the goal, and it is. It's to me, it's the easiest thing to be passionate about because it's your own life. You know what I mean? And so, and to be able to share that with in your case, your sister, with friends, with family, and so. I just think that's really awesome. So I love your show. I think it's fantastic. So remember, guys, it's Pop. Yeah, thank you. So the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast, you are on everything, right?
Pretty much.
Spotify.
I think, yes. Yeah, and Stitcher, which is going down the tubes, unfortunately.
Yeah, bye Stitcher, sad.
Yeah, I know, R.I.P., gone but not forgotten. So yes, I'm on all major podcast platforms, and I do have a website that I finally did after all this time for my podcast, so it's popcultureretrospective.com, so...
Perfect. All right. Yeah. Well, there you go. And I'll have a link, obviously, in the description of this episode, so
awesome.
Everyone can check out your show as well. And I think that's also what's great about podcasting is that I'm not competing with you. We're not competing. You know what I mean? If I have other people from other shows, there's a good friend of mine now, Ty. He's the host of the Whiskey Lodian podcast, which I highly recommend, by the way.
Love the title of that. I'm going to be looking that up. Genius.
I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. So he hosts a show where they drink mixed drinks and talk about Nickelodeon. That's literally their focus, and it's incredible.
Like a plan.
But there's so much out there. Literally, there's no competing podcast. You're not going to choose a podcast over another one. You're going to want to listen to both because you can, and it's not like they're on TV at the same time like the old WCW, WWF wrestling was.
Exactly, or Gummy Bears and the Wuzzles at the same time. Sure, that was really unfortunate.
How were they on at the same time? They're both Disney channels.
They were, but they were both sold to different networks. So one went to ABC and went to CBS, and they aired at the same time on Saturday mornings. But yes, I'm a big that's how I feel. That I kind of call it community over competition. Yes. And so that's again just the coolest thing. I have these people that I've never met but connect with a lot online are my biggest advocates for my show, and it's not something I'm asking them to do. It's just because they're awesome and you're awesome, and we just all want to help each other out and talk to each other and nerd out for a little bit about the time that we grew up, and that's pretty incredible. I wish more people could experience this sort of positive community that is nothing. There's no competition. It's just like, wow, that was a great episode.
Tried.
Or,
I mean, I've tried getting people to come on the podcast with me that just refuse, like straight. In fact, I won't mention names here, but there was somebody that I'm hoping she listens to this episode, because since I started it, she's like, you need to do an episode on Disney Channel movies, because she was big into the Disney. And again, I won't mention names. I don't want to embarrass her, but she knows who she is if she's listening to this, which I hope she is. But I mean, there's nothing like it. Like literally getting on and just talking. You know, whether it's about nostalgia or whatever the podcast topic is, it's fun. It's and you feel like you're big, you know, like in my case, I used to be on the radio, and this is as close as it gets to being on, you know, a regular radio station. So it's terrific. So anyway, that is enough podcast circle jerking.
Yes.
Let's talk Disney Channel movies here, because this is why we're here today. This is why you're listening, and I want to go. So I'm going to list a few. We're going to go into detail on maybe just a couple, because there's only a few that I remember A, watching, and B, liking. You know, because I didn't like them all. Yes. You know, there's actually, I was looking at the list here, and there's definitely a couple that I want to have as like standalone future episodes where we just talk about that. So, you know, definitely want to have you back on to do that too. So,
absolutely.
All right. So before I want to quiz you, but if you have things in front of you, I don't want you to cheat necessarily.
No,
but,
I won't.
Okay. Do you remember? Okay, perfect. Do you remember the first Disney Channel original movie that came out?
Yes, it was Under Wraps in 1997.
Yes. There it is. It was that one about they find a mummy, right?
Yes. And it was, which I realized it was remade. What's up with that?
I did not know that.
Yes,
like
it was
on the
remade,
Disney Channel?
Yes, it was remade in 2021, I think. I want to say, because I tried to find the original Under Wraps, and I don't believe it's on Disney Plus, but the new Under Wraps was on there, which I thought was kind of messed up. So yes, we had to watch it on YouTube, like VHS quality. Such a bummer.
So not only are they remaking their old cartoon movies, they are now remaking their own Disney Channel originals.
Right. God. Which didn't do that well the first time around, but maybe they're hoping to establish a new viewership or something. So
who knows? Although, fun fact, did you know this? I don't know if you had a chance to look up too much about Under Wraps, but do you know who plays the mummy?
I was wondering if it was the same person that plays the mom's boyfriend, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I can't remember the height factor. Yeah, Bill Fagerbakke, I think is how he goes.
Okay, I didn't know that he played it, but I was wondering if it was him just based on the height factor.
Do you know who that is though?
I do, yes. So I remember him in Coach, the TV sitcom Coach with Craig T. Nelson, and I also didn't realize this, because I think this just shows my age, is that he, and not in a good way, that he's a voice of somebody on SpongeBob. I want to say
which I didn't Patrick Star from SpongeBob. Yes,
yeah.
But you never watched SpongeBob? Random. That wasn't ever...
Not really. I think by the time that show came on, I wasn't watching much. You know, once Lear Shorts and like Hey Dude were not on the air, like, and Snick was, you know, that you're done to me, Nickelodeon. You know, you are dead to me. You are dead to me. You can't. You know. So, anyways.
Okay. But anyway, so I thought that was fun. So All right. So I don't know how I want to do this. Okay, here we go. We're going to do it like this. I want you to tell me your favorite Disney Channel original movie, and then I'm going to tell you mine, and then I'll just go through the list, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about those two movies. How about that?
Okay, that sounds like a plan.
Does that work?
Yes.
All right, so what is your favorite Disney Channel original movie?
Yes, hands down, no questions asked, absolutely 100%, it's Brink.
Brink.
Yes.
Love that movie. I would have picked that as my favorite, but I want to have a separate favorite but believe me, that one is like, love it to death.
Yes.
I was big into rollerblading when that came out. Like,
same here.
Huge into rollerblading. Mm-hmm. So I think everyone was in the late 90s, right? That was like the thing. Because you had like the extreme sports and like... Because like in this, is it called the X Games that they go to at the end of it or something? Or I'm trying to remember.
I think it's based off of that. I don't know. I don't think that they end up at the action. I don't think they actually end up at the specific X Games. I could be wrong, but at least it's something very similar or based. It may be very much based on the X Games, which originally was called the Extreme Games.
That's right.
Because everything was to the extreme, especially in the early 90s. Is everything's to the extreme.
And then in the late 90s, there was X and everything. You had Triple X with Vin Diesel. You had D-Generation X in the WWF. You had X everything. So, that's just the way it was, man. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you had, I think Eric Von Dieter played Brink, Andy Brinker, or Brinkman? Yes. Brinker? I don't remember. But
the Brink was his nickname, but I think it was Brinkman.
Brinkman or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but he and his friends are just, they're rollerblading enthusiasts, I guess is the best way to describe it. And then you've got Team X Blades. That's where the X comes in.
Yes. X going to give it to you. So
yeah. So basically, this is almost like the Karate Kid of rollerblading movies. That's probably the best way to describe it. Where you've got these evil rollerblading kids, right? That they cheat to win, and they're bullies in school, and they're the best at all these competitions. And so anyway, long story short, and if I butcher this, I apologize. Please swoop in at any time to correct me.
It's okay.
So Brink is basically like, they're always like, you should come join our team, man. You're great. You deserve better than this group of losers that you're with. Pretty typical 90s stuff. And so, he's like, oh, no, I don't want to do it. And then something stupid happens. Maybe I can't remember if it's like a miscommunication or whatever, where he's like, you know what, fine, I'm going to do it. Or maybe he needs the money or something. I think that might be what it was.
Yes, I think, it was he needs the money. And I just double check it is Brinker. This is his last name. Not Brinkman, Brinker.
There it is.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But yes, he needs money for his family. I think his dad
lost his job or something.
Or lost his job. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So he's like, well, we need the money, so I got to go with the team that wins. And so his friends, of course, they can't understand that, being, whatever. They're like, no, man, you're selling out. So, like, in hindsight, I'm like, no, you guys suck. Like, the dude needs money. Cut him a break. Fun fact, though, do you remember the actor that plays? So basically, the reason there's an opening on Team X Blades for him to join is because one of the players gets injured, or the competitor, whatever it is, the teammates. Do you remember who played that team member?
The one who got injured, that I don't remember, which is sad because I feel like I watched that movie about 5,000 times, but it's just not ringing a bell.
Well, and especially when you realize who it actually is. It's actually Walter Emmanuel Jones, a.k.a. Zack, the Black Power Ranger.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So there it is.
Serious stuff.
Still
right
playing
there.
A teenager in 1997, and I'm pretty sure he was in his 30s at that point. But anyway.
Yes. It happens pretty frequently, which is bizarre, but yes.
So, but anyway, so that's why there's that slot open for him to join. And then, long story short, he ends up going, nah, man, I'm not going to sell out. And he ended up going back to his own team or whatever. There's another guy, and I can't remember his name, and I didn't do my homework on this, but the guy who plays like the main, what's the name of the main, like, kind of antagonist on Team X Blades? The tall guy with the dark brown hair.
Val.
Val. Okay. Do you remember who else? I don't remember the actor's name. Do you remember what other character that guy played, though, early in the 90s?
I'm trying to think. I feel like I remember reading something, but now can't think of it.
So Val was in another sports movie in the 90s called The Little Giants, and he played Spike.
Oh my God.
He was the giant football player that shows up halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
So and then he goes to rollerblading apparently. So
wow. Well, you know what? It's good to be a multi-sport athlete. It's good to be able to hit the half pipe, hit the field. It's good to be a jack of all trades.
Yes. Absolutely. So, but and in typical kind of 90s fashion, the feel good moment at the end where you've got the good guys going against the bad guys in the competition. Good guys win, and that's all she wrote, man.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I mean, and I say this as I don't want to say I'm a masculine guy, but I'm certainly more rugged than some.
Sure.
I was always very jealous of Brink's hair. Can I just say that? Like, the dude had like the best hair, and I wish I could. I had
agree
very
with that.
you don't know that now because I'm super bald now, but like back in the day, I actually had a lot of hair, but it was very wavy. Like it wouldn't fall flat, which it's just the way it grew, and so I could never do like the really good I call it like the boy band hairstyle, right? Where it was like the hair over the eyes, super long, and but like it just looked glorious, and so anyway.
Yes, and we always want what we can't have, because I'm too. I have. There's a reason why I have a hat on, so that people don't need to. If this gets put anywhere, that they don't need to see my like humongous humid hair style that happens this time of year. So I too always wanted to have nice straight hair parted down the middle perfectly, but that never happens.
Yeah.
It's just too.
No, I tried it one time, and there's I remember my 8th grade school picture. I tried parting it in the middle, and I looked like Dwight Schrute. Quite frankly, it just it wasn't
which could work now. Which now,
sure. I mean, I could probably pull it off. Well, I can't now, obviously, but if I had hair, I would totally pull it off. But
nice.
no, back then I didn't look good, and then I went to gel soon after that, and I just gelled my hair with the front spikes. That's what everyone does. I don't know what that style's called, but
I think that's also a boy band thing too, because that was like a big 98 degrees Nick Lachey hair gel thing. I could see that.
That was like they kind of evolved from having the Brink hair to the gelled swoopy hair. What's that? Is that even called something? What do you call that? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's a name for it, but I don't know what it is. I just call it kind of like the Nick Lachey hair.
I mean, I had that honestly until I lost my hair. I would try that. Like even like in my wedding photos, I had that hairstyle, and it's bad because I'm clearly going bald. But I was holding on.
Right, you got to work with what you got. Yeah, understandable.
That's all I knew.
I understand. Yeah.
Because there's some cool hairstyles that are out these days that if I had hair, like I would rock. Because there are some nice ones.
Well, unfortunately, the mullets are coming back, which I think is
and I could do that. I could do the skullet. I could do the Hulk Hogan skullet.
I saw Hulk Hogan in person, and he is humongous. Yes, he was getting a tour at Disney World when I was working there, and he's very tan and huge, and had a mullet, and it was interesting. That's
nice. Well, it's a skullet because he didn't have any top hair. So
yes, that nice blonde.
Originated.
Yes, that nice blonde hair sticking out back.
What is it that they say in It's Always Sunny? He's got the hair of corn silk and a Fu Manchu mustache and the skin of a hot dog.
That sounds about right. Yes, that's a very good way to describe him. Yes, I was raised on Hulk Hogan, so yes, that is perfect.
Yeah. There it is. Yes. All right, so yours is Brink. I would agree. 2 thumbs up. Amazing movie. And ironically enough, my favorite Disney Channel movie came out right after Brink.
Okay.
In chronological order. Also, both released in 1998. That would be Halloweentown.
Oh, nice. Good
Did you ever see Halloweentown? Have you seen it?
I did, yes. I remember it being on TV, of course, and because I think at that time I was, 1998, so I think I was like a sophomore maybe in high school, so probably not something I prioritized watching by any means, but certainly big Disney nerd, late bloomer. I, liked very simple stories to follow, so I certainly remember Halloweentown. I think that's one of the most popular movies that have come out as the Disney Channel original movies, which I didn't realize people call them DCOMs.
Yeah,
apparently that's a thing.
I learned this a couple of years ago on Reddit. They were abbreviated as DCOMs, and people I think even my sister-in-law, who's a huge Disney Channel fan, says DCOM. Like that's what you call them. So I didn't know that. I just call them Disney Channel movies or Disney movies, even. You know what I mean? I didn't, but. Yeah, man. All right. So those are, and so Halloweentown is, it's as far as, again, one of my favorites. Came out in 1998. It's about a family of kids who learn that they are essentially descended from witches and warlocks, not wizards. By the way, I don't know if you know the difference, and maybe if not, I don't know. Like somebody can let us know. But what is the difference between a wizard and a warlock?
That is a great question, and I have never really gotten into the whole fantasy genre, so I could not tell you what that is, but I guarantee that there's somebody who can probably answer that within like 2 seconds, perhaps, that listens to your show. Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. Let us know, like if this gets up on YouTube or just, ping me on Instagram or whatever, because I'm curious. I don't know.
Me neither.
Because in this case, so like the girls in the family, the Cromwells, the Cromwells, right? Remember that? They are descended from witches. Their mom, and I remember this as a kid and I was very excited because do you remember who played the mom in this movie?
I do. It was the one and only Judith Hoag, who was April in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was released in 89 or 90 that live action movie came out? 1990. Okay. Which was one of my favorite movies when that came out. Oh my gosh.
It's still my favorut movie of all time. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Again, running away and living. Oh, yes. Who didn't? There's so many, there's a lot of female characters in hindsight. Like, God, I really had a crush on her. Anyways, meanwhile, back at the ranch. But anyway, that's for another podcast episode. But the interesting thing I learned, I did an episode pretty early on, I think, in my podcast about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because that was like my life growing up, is that she really struggled with the film because it was so violent and aggressive. There's a lot of fight scenes and just kind of senseless acts of violence and a lot of very bad Asian stereotypes, but
that's why she doesn't come back for the second one, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So she's like, you know what? Forget the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm going to Disney, and I want to be in, Halloweentown, and then Halloweentown 2, and then Halloweentown High. So she went on to bigger and better things.
Oh, and she's been around so many, and it's,
Yes.
you do see, because she goes to the conventions and she totally, I think, has embraced the fact that she's always, and I've never met her, I've always wanted to, but I know she's always very gracious to the fans from what I've seen, and so, I mean,
that's awesome.
she's terrific. Yeah.
I love that when they just get it, like, and they just come to some level of acceptance. Yeah. Just like, hey, this is how people know me and I'm good with that. And they want to talk to me about it. That's awesome.
I mean, I could throw her a curveball if I ever meet her, and I'll just ask to talk about Halloweentown. I don't know, just to see what she says. But yeah, she's great. So anyway, and then do you remember who plays the grandmother?
Yes, Debbie Reynolds, who I could watch anything that Debbie Reynolds is. She is a national treasure. She is amazing. She's so funny. She's so easy to watch. I'm a big was, I guess, because it's not on the air anymore, but I was a huge Will and Grace fan, and she played Grace's mom in that show and does an outstanding comedic job in that role. It was unbelievable. So I think she did fantastic in that, which apparently Julie Andrews was considered for the role of.
Really? I didn't know that.
That is a tough. I mean, Julie Andrews and Debbie Reynolds.
She's pretty great too. Yeah.
Yeah, that is just like the star power of just those two alone is just amazing.
Well, I think what blew my mind too is when I realized who Debbie Reynolds was. That's Carrie Fisher's mom.
Yes.
So she is the true mother of Princess Leia, right?
Right. Yeah.
So when I finally realized, I was like, oh wow, because she doesn't look anything like her. You know what I mean? But
no, and and unfortunately passed away so close in time with each other. But I guess she would go around the set, and that's how she introduced herself during when it was
Carrie
filmed.
Fisher's mom.
Yeah, she says hi. Hello, I'm Princess Leia's mom. Allegedly.
Yeah, well, right, yeah. Well, it's funny though because she obviously had a very successful career in her own right, well before Halloweentown. But
right,
I unfortunately just because of the success of Star Wars, like you're not getting out from under that shadow, even if you're the mom.
Never gonna happen.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
But she's got Halloweentown to her credit, which is, I think, a fantastic one. And so anyway, long story short, the grandmother, played by Debbie Reynolds, she lives in Halloweentown, this magical, mystical place that you can only get to by flying bus. And it's it's Halloween all year round there. And you've got all these monsters and creepy characters that are just super nice and friendly. And it's just so lovely. And you've got this evil wizard Calabar, who's basically like making everyone mean. Like in hindsight, this is a pretty hokey movie. Like I'm not going to deny that, but
for sure.
For some reason, like for me, I was 11 when this came out, and like 11-year-old me was like, I was in. Like let's do this. Like
you were the prime age for this. Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
I had a crush on what's her face, the main, obviously the mom, but also the main. Was her name Mamie or
Marnie? I think it was Marnie.
Marnie Cromwell. Huge crush on Marnie as well. I knew her from actually not just this, but I think she was in a couple of episodes of Goosebumps as well.
Oh, nice.
If you ever watched that. Yeah. So I knew her, and she was just, huge crush on her. That was pretty much my motivating factor for most things I've realized that I watched as a kid was like, did they have a girl that I thought was really pretty?
Right.
I probably watched it, but no, it was, again, it's a predictable story, but it's fun. And this was pre Harry Potter, right? So like you didn't, this was close, like you didn't have. I mean, it was very close, but you had the kids who realized their destiny as a witch and warlock, and you're like, oh man, well that's kind of cool. And then Harry Potter came around. I'm like, well, this is like copying Halloweentown. And then I read Harry Potter, and that was it because I love Harry Potter. Yes. But this was first. And so I was a huge fan. And honestly, Halloween is my favorite holiday of the year, like bar none. Mm-hmm. Like it's not even close, just because like the fall season and where I grew up, very similar to where you live now in Maine in the Northeast. It's it's beautiful in the fall. I love the fall and Halloweentown. So it's funny because before Disney Plus came out and you could just watch it, like I actually paid money as a 30-year-old man to get this on iTunes to watch it.
Nice.
Because I just wanted to say I hadn't seen it in so long, and I think at that point they were super strict about what you could find on YouTube and with a lot of their stuff. So I was like, you know what? Let me just pay the I think it was like $15, honestly. Wow. I was like, let's pay $15. I'll watch it. Yeah. And it's like just over an hour. It's not even that long. You know what I mean? But I'm a huge fan. So thumbs up for me there. I never saw any of the sequels. Did you see any of the sequels?
I did not. I think if I did, I probably only watched a few minutes of it. But no, I haven't. I think by the time those came out, that was way beyond my watching anything on the Disney Channel. Because just like Nickelodeon, once Disney Channel stopped having Walt Disney World Inside Out on and Bug Juice, you are dead to me. No, I'm just kidding. I'll always be a lifelong Disney fan, but their perspective on a lot of things, again, which is a very complicated, long-winded story, is just
Yes.
is just different now. So I just can't relate as much to some of the stuff that they put out, but people still love their movies, so that's a good thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, and especially again, like Disney Plus, like it's if I'm putting a Disney movie on, or like on Friday night or whatever, because we have pizza movie night every Friday with the kids, like we're watching old Disney movies. That's what we do. Like this, even just the other night, kids slept over at my sister-in-law's house for just a sleepover. It's summertime, right? And so they watched Mulan, like the OG Mulan animated movie. They loved it. They'd never seen it before.
I think your sister-in-law and I could be friends because Mulan is a fantastic movie. Yes.
Yeah, it's her
choice.
absolute favorite. Like that is her favorite Disney movie. Yeah, and then we watched the live action and we're kind of disappointed. But anyway, so all right, those are the two movies. Like those are like our big shout outs. I've seen a couple.
Yes.
I'm going to go through the ones on this list now, and we won't have to talk about them, but just to see if you remember them at least. So we'll go through them in order. So again, Under Wraps was the first one, which I never saw. You said you did see.
I did. Yeah, I think I remember seeing it when it was on, and then I was able to find it on YouTube, which I'm sure will be taken down at some point soon. But maybe because it's not on Disney Plus, maybe it's kind of on the
You're like, well, you can't. On the list. They can't make money on it elsewhere. They might as well just not care.
Right, like we're gonna make a new one anyways in 2021. So whatever, you can keep it on your YouTube page or YouTube channel or whatever.
Exactly.
So. Yeah, certainly. Very predictable plot, but fun. And I want to make sure to say this too. Yeah. Is it has the most like disturbing opening scene in it? That's like, I can't even believe that it was allowed. So the opening scene of the movie is kind of like a movie within a movie. So there's what seems to be like the movie's playing, but it turns out that there's kids that are in the actual movie watching a movie at a movie theater. But anyways, this long story short, a knife ends up falling out of like the dad's hands and lands in the people call it like a pig, the garbage disposal. And it's spinning around and spinning around and spinning around, like violently spinning around. And the monster breaks into the house and is like strangling the dad and shoving him into the sink. And it's kind of, it's sort of implied that the dad is going to get stabbed.
Disposed of. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Disposed of via wielding garbage disposal wielding knife. And then it cuts to the kids in the movie theater. It's like, this is really...
That's messed up.
Yes. Like, I know Disney's got a little bit of like some darkness to some movies, i.e. Bambi, Lion King, but this was like pretty graphic. I mean, they didn't show what happened, but it was like, oh my God, this dad is going to get like shoved into this knife wielding garbage disposal. This is insane.
Well, certainly implied, but that's messed up.
It's awful.
Like,
yeah.
Jeez.
Okay. Yeah. Within the first 5 minutes of the movie, it's like, wow, this dad's going to die violently. This is great. This is off to a good start. So maybe that's why they don't have it on Disney Plus. Cause it's like, oh, we really blew it on the opening was not good. So
well, and who knows? Yeah, I'm sure they probably don't include that scene in the remake, but who knows?
True.
I never saw it, so I can't say anything. But since you did see it, thumbs up or thumbs down?
I would say thumbs up. I mean, it was, I think it was easy to watch and pretty funny at times. And if you are into gore, then just watch the first 5 minutes of the movie.
There it is.
But I thought it was pretty well done and pretty creepy. I mean.
Okay.
So, I thought it was better. I would say it was better than I expected.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. All right. Next one that came out was one called You Lucky Dog. And if I recall, is this the one with Kirk Cameron where he turns into a dog?
That is a great question. That sounds vaguely familiar, but I cannot confirm or deny that information. So I'm not sure.
Remember, because I again, like I remember seeing the commercials more than actually seeing the movies.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna look this up because this is gonna drive me crazy. So so You Lucky Dog is about a rich man who dies and leaves his wealth to his dog. Starring Kirk Cameron. There it is. Yep. So I think he transforms into a Saint Bernard, I believe. I'm not gonna read through the whole plot here because we're not talking about this more than we have to. But yeah, so anyway, that's what it was. And so there's Lucky the dog. Never mind. So I don't think he turns into a dog. I think he has a dog and he's trying to get the money from the dog's inheritance or whatever. So, Anyway,
that sounds a very interesting plot. I could see why that's kind of not on a lot of people's radars because that is a very random. I mean, a lot of these are random, but that is a very random plot.
Well, a little different, than Under Wraps as far as direction they took, apparently. So, all right, so we can't rank that one. Up next, we have Brink. Obviously, 2 thumbs up there from us. Then Halloweentown. Same.
Sorry. One thing I forgot to say about Brink is that apparently Eric Von, what is his name? Eric. Yes, he was the voice of Sid in Toy Story.
Yes, all three of the Toy Stories, in fact. They brought him back for that one cameo in Toy Story 3.
That guy, that is unbelievable. So not only is Brick, I mean, an amazing movie. I mean, he sure as heck convinced me that he's a awesome rollerblader. But he was voice of Sid. What a great, he did so well doing that and made it sound like he had braces. I don't know. I mean, amazing. Well, I might just, mind blown.
And then he was also in the remake of Leave It to Beaver in the 90s. Do you remember that movie?
Vaguely, yes.
He was it Wally? No, is that the older brother, Wally?
I think he was Wally.
He was the older brother. I think it was Wally Cleaver. Yes, I remember he played Wally. That's what I first actually saw him in, was that, and then I saw him in Brink.
Yeah.
And then I realized
rollerblading, Sid, Wally.
Dude,
triple
dude had
threat.
it all, man. And yet, where is he now? I don't know. He's probably doing his own thing. I haven't checked.
Yeah. He's like behind the scenes stuff or something now.
He might be. Yeah. A lot of these kid actors, man, you gotta, it's honestly a 50-50 as to whether or not they're either still doing it or, totally distance themselves or still into it or, having trouble along the way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Halloweentown we gave a thumbs up to. Fantastic. The next one that came out was one that you had alluded to early on, but it sounds like you didn't watch it, neither did I, but Zenon, the Girl of the 21st Century.
Yes.
Did you ever, so you never saw that?
I think I did.
Okay.
One of those things that I maybe popped on in between watching my recordings of NSYNC live performances on TV. I,
Nice.
probably paused the tape for a minute to watch that. But yeah, I think that was a big, not to stereotype, I think just a lot of girls liked that movie, and I wasn't necessarily super into super girly movies per se, and I was older by the time this came out. But I do think that my cousins, I have a cousin that's about 6 or 7 years younger than I am, I believe she was a huge fan of this because I think there's I think there's a lot of musical aspects to the movie, maybe.
I never saw it, honestly. Yeah. So it's possible.
Yeah. I think that's part of its appeal.
Yeah, well, I know that like when you go on Reddit or whatever, like this one's always brought up as like one of the best. And again, I've never seen it. I probably never will. I don't have, unless like, again, it's my sister-in-law's favorite actually. So if she makes me watch it, I'll watch it. But yeah, I'm not gonna go out of my way unless someone's watched it with me that really wants to. So, all right, so no thumbs there because we don't really remember it.
Somewhere in the middle maybe.
There you go. Up next, I never heard of this one at all. Even like now, it's called Can of Worms. Does that ring a bell?
It does ring a bell, but I don't think I saw it.
Yep, same here. So nothing there. Up next, this one I do remember, and I think I even saw this one. It was The 13th Year in 1999. I think that's the one where the boy is a mermaid or something, right?
Yes, he turns into a merman. He realizes that he was adopted, I think, and his birth parents or whatever were mermaids. Yeah.
And he's on the swim team, and then he's like, oh, it's kind of perfect timing. Of course, he's a swimmer and gets really good at swimming because he develops fins, and it's, I forget the name of the guy, but he's in all kinds of Disney movies, that guy that plays the kid in the main character. And again, I'm not going to look it up because I'm probably never going to watch it again. But but I do remember that one. I liked it. I'll say thumbs medium for that one since I remember seeing it, but don't have any negative feelings, but don't have any positive feelings.
I think it was a pretty well-received movie from what I understand. I think in terms of popularity of the movies and ones that people remember, that's pretty high on the list.
I think that's probably going to be true for most of these early ones because back then you didn't really have any other choice. Like you had movies on TV, and that's really cool. And so like of course they re-aired them a ton. That's how I remember watching a lot of them. Was they always re-aired them. Usually it was like a Friday night they would do like a Disney Channel original movie after My Brotherly Love and Growing Pains was on. You know, so that's probably how I saw it. But
it's like, could Friday night get any better? I mean, come on.
The answer is maybe, because you had TGIF at the same time, which was, I'm definitely planning on doing a TGIF episode of the podcast in the future. So
definitely.
All right, so let's see. Up next, another one that I do remember seeing, or at least part of, was Smart House. Remember Smart House? Which is funny because I live in essentially a smart house now with all of my Amazon-controlled devices that are listening into my every whim. Yep. But the one thing I remember about that movie is that, do you remember who played like the house, the AI?
Absolutely. That it would be Katie Seagal, who played Peg Bundy on Married with Children, which I was forced to watch as a child.
Oh, so, I love it. You don't like it?
I do like that show. I think it's one of those things that at the time I'm like, really, are we going to watch this? And I think my mom was like, because my dad kind of influenced a lot of stuff that we watched in the the best
Gotcha.
way possible. But I think at the time she's like, really, this is like such a nutty show. But I think in hindsight, I think it's hysterical.
I think watching it back as a parent now, it's even better, honestly.
Oh yes,
it's just
yes, absolutely, yeah. There are so many things that I appreciate now as an adult, big time, and as a parent, yes.
And then not only that, but she is also in Futurama, if you recall.
Yeah, I never watched Futurama, but I'm familiar with the show. But I didn't realize it. But that's so awesome.
I've never seen. I haven't watched much Futurama. Is it Leela, the girl with the one eye and the purple hair?
Yes,
I forget. But anyway,
I think so.
That's her. That's Katie Seagal.
Yes.
Or Sagal. Is it Seagal?
I'm probably thinking of Steven Seagal, and I always do this on like every episode of my podcast. I always goof up anything that has not a vowel in it. Because of my Midwestern upbringing, I blame it on that. I always goof that up. So
that's okay.
Yes,
it happens.
Yeah.
Y'all know who we're talking about. That's the point. There you go.
Katie something. Katie something.
It's Peg Bundy. Yeah. So anyway, that's all I remember from that one, and it was a good movie. I think it was good. I give it a thumbs up because I do remember it, and So I'm not going to have that to say for most of these going forward. So I'm gonna do it while I can. All right, up next, coming out also in 1990. So 1999 was a big year. We had 8 movies came out in 99 alone for Disney Channel.
How did they find the time?
Yeah, I'm saying. So the next one on the list here, Johnny Tsunami, another one that you hear a lot about on the message boards, as it were, on Reddit and whatnot. I never saw this one, though. Did you ever see this one?
I did see this, and I think this, again, just speaks to, not to stereotype, but I think when we were growing up, there certainly was. So I fully embrace it, but, big time tomboy for me growing up. So anything that had to do with sports or anything anything related to sports, whether it was a winter sport, even though I hate winter, anything related to sports, I was certainly interested in. So this was certainly at the kind of at the top of the list. And
surfing, right? Didn't he surf?
Yeah. So I think kind of the synopsis of the movie is that there's a boy named Johnny who grows up in Hawaii, and his grandfather is this really amazing sort of hippie surfer guy, and they're really close. And Johnny's dad is kind of frustrated that the grandfather has such a strong influence on him, and he kind of wants to get him away from the grandfather, which is pretty horrible. The dad's a jerk, which I'm sure we'll talk about as a theme here in a moment. But so the dad ends up moving the family to Vermont with a week's notice to his son, which is super lame. And so then he has to move from Hawaii, which is, beautiful and warm, which is where I personally would prefer to live. However, that's not going to happen. But anyways, he moves the family to Vermont, and Johnny then takes up snowboarding. Okay. And there is a kind of a bully in the movie that tries to kind of makes fun of him for being from Hawaii. But the cool part about why I think I like this movie so much is that this kid, Johnny, never really lets the bullies get to him. And there isn't some like horrible like fight scene or him trying to really like get back at them. He just doesn't let it bother him, which I think is just really awesome. And there's, not some horrible like conclusion. I mean, you can kind of guess how it ends, but he just doesn't get really bothered by it and still kind of goes about being a good person and, being a good friend to people. And it was just I think ultimately like a really great, easy to watch movie. And the kid who plays the lead character, I feel like is a really great actor and is just very convincing in his role. And the grandfather, I can kind of relate because his grandfather is actually Japanese. He was in, I think, the Mortal Kombat movie.
That's how I know him, is Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat. And then he's also in a more recent movie, he's in The Man in the High Castle. Not a movie, but a show. You ever watch that show? He's like one of the Japanese like officials or whatever.
Oh, nice.
But he's from Hawaii. I think he's American. He's Japanese American, but I think he grew up in Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I grew up, my grandmother is from Japan, so I think anything that involves like an elderly or older Japanese influence, I just really appreciate because that was, a huge part of my life. So I think I enjoyed this movie, and somebody that Johnny befriends in the movie, the character's name is Sam, and that Sam is played by Lee Thompson Young,
Oh,
who
yeah.
I think was
Okay.
a famous Jet
The
Jackson.
famous Jet Jackson. Yep.
Yeah, and so and he has a pretty sad story too, and again something that I can sort of speak to as well. As he was diagnosed with bipolar in his late teen years, and ended up passing away as a result of that. And I think he certainly left a legacy and was such a great actor, and was gone too soon. And I think he would have gone on to do other great things for Disney because he was just a very natural talent who wore a pretty awesome ski hat in the movie. So there's that too.
There it is.
Yeah.
All right. So thumbs up from you then for that one.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I would recommend
Okay.
it. Yeah, I think it's one of the better ones out of all of them for sure. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and unfortunately, again, never saw it, but I mean the trailers, and I know that Shang Tsung is in it, so that's cool. Good enough for me to give it a thumbs up. So
yes.
All right, we're not even out of the '90s yet, but the next one here I don't remember is called Genius.
I don't think that does not ring a bell.
Okay. All right. So we're just moving on then. The next one, don't look under the bed. No.
Title sounds familiar, but I couldn't. I mean, I can kind of guess what it's about, but I can't.
Sure.
I couldn't tell you a synopsis at all.
Yeah, same here. This next one I remember seeing trailers for, but couldn't tell you what it's about. Never watched it. It was Horse Sense.
No, if anything that had to do with horses, I was not going to watch. I can't.
You were not a horse girl?
No, I had some pretty traumatic, and I'm being dramatic, but I had some pretty traumatic, horseback riding experiences growing up. So the thought of watching anything about horses, going horseback riding, I have no interest in ever going horseback riding ever again. So anything that has to do with horses, no thanks. No, not my cup of tea. And my sister wasn't into horses either. So if she wasn't into that, then I definitely wasn't going to watch it. So.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, I'm only going to give one more because again, I feel like we could just keep going through these, and that would be the whole episode. And I want to talk through like the themes of these and whatnot a little bit more.
Yeah.
So the last one I'll say here is the first one that came out in 2000. It was called Up, Up and Away. And does that ring a bell to you at all?
It does not at all.
Nope. Me neither. So there it is. I do want to give a couple shout outs. So there's a couple more on the list that I have seen. And so shout out to Phantom of the Megaplex that came out the following year, or it came out in 2000 toward the end.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to The Luck of the Irish, where I think the guy thinks he's like a leprechaun or something. I remember that one.
Yeah, I've heard about that, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, same here. And then actually this one I did see because this was definitely geared toward an older audience. But in 2002, True Confessions. Did you ever see that one?
No. What
that was an
about?
amazing one. So that one is about a girl named True who I can't remember if she does like a video blog or just like a regular blog or whatever. But she has a younger brother played by Shia LaBeouf who is, I want to say, autistic. He definitely he's got some special needs. But long story short, he's like, she loves her younger brother, but obviously very stressful, stressed out because he can be a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember there's scenes where he gets picked on and he just and it's very heartbreaking because Shia LaBeouf is a fantastic actor. I don't care what anyone says. He's an amazing actor. And so anything that he's in, I will give a shot. In all seriousness. But this one was just really tough to watch because you just felt so bad for the kid because I know I was guilty of this as a kid. There were certainly kids in my school that, had special needs that I was not the nicest to. And I think it was probably because I was trying to fit in. It was certainly not because I thought less of them.
Right.
And in hindsight, I'm like, man, I did some shitty things. It wasn't that bad. I didn't go out of my way to physically assault anyone or anything like that. But I remember I would, behind their back, I would make fun of kids, and it was never, certainly not proud of that. And I'm even embarrassed to say it out loud. You know what I mean? Because it's terrible.
Yeah.
Especially,
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you on that.
So But it's a very emotional movie. I highly recommend that one. That one gets a double thumbs up because, I haven't seen it in 20 years, so I don't know if it still holds up, but watching it back in the day, really good. So I recommend that one.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Yeah, my oldest son is on the autism spectrum, so that might be could be a potentially bittersweet movie to watch. Yeah. So I'll definitely put that on the list. Yeah.
There it is.
Okay.
All right. So that's all I'm going to go through on the movie titles, but let's talk about kind of the themes, because I feel like a lot of these had very similar themes. You kind of alluded to it with Johnny Tsunami with the dad,
Yes.
and this was pretty, not just Disney, but like there's a big trope of the '90s where you had like the neglectful parent who's and again, I haven't seen Johnny Tsunami. I'm guessing the dad worked in like business and like was never home or always busy, and he didn't have time for his son, and but he didn't want anyone else to raise his son because he probably was harboring his own secret guilt and took it out on his son. So
And the grandfather.
And
Yes.
the grandfather, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I feel like that was definitely, a big. So, another example of that, I think, a little bit was Halloweentown, where the mom, she wasn't a bad mom by any means, but she was certainly trying to shelter her kids from having, exposure too much to her grandmother for
Right.
various reasons. And so, I feel like there was always that, and maybe this was because whoever made these movies was struggling as well, because I've, as a parent now, like I know there's that struggle with, our kids, and their grandparents, right? As far as like they see their grandparents as like these idols and they just look up to them, and all they want to do is spend time with them, and you're like, well, no, listen, like let's have our family time. And that's for me as a parent, and I know they don't mean it, but like when they're like, oh, I like going to grandma's house way more than I like being here, and you're like,
Right.
yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Because the woman that you see as grandma is not the woman that raised me, I promise you. But
Right.
Once they become grandparents, everything changes. And so I feel like that was definitely a big theme.
Yes.
What were some other like tropes that you've noticed in the ones that you've seen?
Yeah, I think there's certainly like a one-parent household due to either divorce or death, hating on the grandparents for sure, and some kid that sort of needs to overcome some obstacles or learn a new skill, and then there ends up being some sort of like showdown battle or something to kind of prove that the protagonist, will succeed. And it's funny because in preparation for this episode, I kind of like randomly stumbled upon a really, really awesome podcast that I highly recommend. And I've never like talked to these people, like no affiliation, like I'm just putting out there because they're awesome. It's these two gentlemen from England, and it's called Mom Can't Cook, a DCOM podcast. And it's kind of like this theme around like the mom is like too busy or, can't cook or like makes the kids weird food in a lot of the movies. And their take on all of these movies is hysterical. I've been listening to it as I've been like going on for walks or in my car, and I've been literally laughing out loud. So I highly recommend it. So yeah. So that is a great resource for anybody who's listening to the show that just wants to like flood their ears with hilarious, hysterical, unscripted, so freaking funny Mom Can't Cook podcast. It's so good. But yeah, highly recommend. But yeah, I think that there's usually some kind of absent parent. I feel like a lot of times like the dad in the movie is kind of a dud.
If he's
for lack of a
around,
better
he's
term.
a dud. Yeah.
Yes.
If
Dad's kind of an
assuming that he's in
idiot.
the movie. Yep.
Yeah, dad's kind of a moron, which is like accepted, that everybody's just going to be like hating on the dad, which is, really unfortunate. And then, and then there's usually some sort of relationship between a siblings, usually like a brother and a sister typically. And I feel like it's always like the little sister is really annoying, and she thinks that her, big brother is really annoying. And I know in like the opening of Under Wraps, again, with that horrible scene that, where the dad's about to get stabbed to death, the brother says the sister is complaining or making fun of the little brother or something. And he said like, shut up, you fat cow. It's like, oh my, wow.
Jeez. Well, okay, let's address that
my
too. 'Cause
gosh.
I feel like a lot of things from those movies, like even like by Disney standards, like you can't get away with now. Like I remember in Brink, what was her name? Christina Vega was the actress.
That sounds right. Yes.
So she was, I forget her name in the movie, but
She was Gabrielle.
There it is. Yeah. So she's Peruvian, and I remember like Val, the antagonist, was like, "You don't like it? Why don't you go back to Mexico?" And she's like, "I'm from Peru, estupido." And I'm like, "That would not. You can't say that now."
No,
like,
that's awful. Yeah.
So, and then, you mentioned that, and I assume it probably happened. I didn't see Johnny Tsunami, but the fact that you said they kind of made fun of him from being from Hawaii, I assume that's probably based on his appearance or whatever.
Yes, they made, that was a part of the whole thing. And the bully, interestingly enough, the bully in Johnny Tsunami was actually in one of my favorite movies as a kid. That was a made-for-TV movie called, which was Dennis the Menace.
Oh yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting to see that the bully. I'm like, oh my god, you were Pee-wee in that made-for-TV movie that I watched religiously. But anyways, yeah, they called him Hawaii the whole time in the TV show, and made fun of his grandfather and stuff like that. And yeah, a lot of things that certainly I don't think would fly today. That's like, are you
Right.
Did this really happen? Yeah. But a lot of hateful speech to each other, just like especially like the sibling banter was like really unnecessarily rude. And usually the bully conversations with the the kid that they were picking on were pretty stereotypical.
Terrible.
Pretty terrible. Yeah.
Another thing I noticed, and this is not just Disney Channel movies, but they certainly stole it from it, was, again, you kind of talked about a little bit like the overcoming the challenges. Like there's a whole thing of like self-acceptance and being comfortable with who you are.
Yeah.
I feel like Halloweentown, Brink,
Yes.
what's the one? The 13th Year, where he's a mermaid, like just accepting who you are and embracing it and realizing that it makes you a better person.
Yes.
I feel like that was huge in pretty much all of them because, their audience they were targeting was feeling the same way, right? Like, can I be okay with who I am? And I know I can relate to that because, I can't remember, did we talk about it on your podcast? Like I'm 36 almost. It's taken me a long time, but I finally accepted who I am.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Like that's just
absolutely.
It's so important. And so the fact I appreciate that they were preaching that message, and they still do. I feel like most movies these days still have some of that as well. But that was a huge focal point. That was like the one of the lessons they learned at the end was like be true to yourself and be cool with that because it's going to pay off for you, in the long run.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of themes around grief in a lot of movies too, coming to some level of acceptance with that, or, just having it become a part of you and, not defining who you are, but having it be a part of you, I think was a big theme in the movie. And also probably, and I could relate to this at this time too, is acceptance around, your parents either being divorced, which my parents got divorced when I was in 5th or 6th grade, I want to say, at a time where none of my friends' parents were divorced or are still actually like together to this day, which is like incredible.
Yeah.
But, a lot of themes with that, I think, which was I could certainly relate to, or your parents dating somebody else, which I certainly struggled with as a tween or, and teenager, was like, this is really weird. This feels really bizarre. I don't like this. I don't want to like this other person. So I think that they really struck a lot of, hit a lot of chords and struck a lot of chords with young people like ourselves that were, insecure, trying to figure out who we were, trying to fit in. Family dynamics are challenging. I think that they really did a good job of trying to, as much as possible, I guess, in the 90s, but trying to diversify things a little bit, which was certainly welcomed.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I very fond memories of Disney Channel movies, and again, I think they're still making them today. I don't know, but
they are. Yep. They're still going. They have a whole list of ones that are still to be released this year alone. It's out of control. Yeah.
It's, well, I mean, hey, and they got more of an audience than ever with streaming and things like that. So, they're obviously making them for a reason. So, before we wrap up, who would you say, if you could pick one actor or actress that came out of any of these movies, who would you say has been the most successful in, all the way till now?
I would say, I guess, actually two people come to mind just like thinking right off the bat. And and I have not seen any of the movies that they're in, the movies on the Disney Channel that they were in. But I would say Zac Efron.
Yep, I was going to say that.
Yeah, and Demi Lovato.
Yes. Or is it?
Yeah.
What about Selena Gomez? Was she one of them, or is it?
She may have been.
I thought Selena Gomez was in High School Musical. I could be totally wrong. I never saw it. I'm sorry if you're listening to this.
I thought she was Vanessa.
Or maybe it's Vanessa Hudgens. I don't know.
How I know that, I have no idea because I've never seen that movie, and that's like not my it's not. I was past the age demographic.
I was
know
in
who
college
that is
when that came out.
Yeah.
Zac Efron, though, I was going to say, like, bar none, I think he is the most successful and probably well-rounded at this point, to this day of all of them. I'd say a runner-up would be Shia LaBeouf, and now, granted, he was already kind of well-known before the movie he was in with, he was in, Even Stevens on the Disney Channel, which I was a huge fan of.
Yeah, that was a cute show.
Yeah, so he kind of got to start there, I think. But obviously, True Confessions helped kind of elevate him a little bit more, and then just a few. Literally, it's crazy to think because time moves a lot slower when you're younger. It's crazy to think that in 2002 he was in True Confessions, and then literally like 5 years later he was in Transformers. Like that blows my mind.
Yeah, it's and he. Some of the most like troubled people are some of the most talented actors and actresses and musicians, and he's certainly up there on that list. He's I mean incredibly talented.
Obviously glad he's still with us, because unfortunately it's not always the case with a lot of these very talented child actors. So
right.
And I think he's on a good path. I don't know. Again, like I'm not one to like talk about like gossip about celebrities like I know them. I feel
same
like
here. I am the same way. I never never go down that path.
I just, no offense, if that's like your thing that gets you up every day, good for you. Like I don't care. Like I don't know them. If they're my friends and they happen to be famous, that's totally different. But they're not. Like I don't know these people, but I obviously don't wish ill upon them. And so, I just
that's exactly how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I just hope that if he's struggling, whatever, get do okay, get better. I don't know. I'm not good at those things.
Yeah. I'm with you on that for sure.
All right. Well, Amy, any final thoughts on DCOMs before we wrap this bad boy up?
Final thoughts on DCOM. Well, I think that, which again, I've only known of that phrase or acronym for the last week, so I feel very enlightened, and I feel so young and hip now.
Absolutely.
Just like I didn't know what bae meant or goat, and I had to ask.
Doesn't bae just mean babe?
No, it means before anyone else. According to a high school kid that I used to work with, because I didn't know what that meant.
I didn't know what that meant. Jeez.
Yeah.
And then I knew goat because I forget where I heard goat, but I knew goat.
Yeah. So I feel very enlightened now. And I think that I feel like I'm grateful that I was a teenager when these movies came out. And I think that it's nice that there's sort of like maybe like two going on 3-ish now generations of people who have been sort of raised on these movies, and I think that their topics are just going to get more diverse and hit a sort of a broader audience. And I think that there's just something nice about being able to sit down, watch a movie, nothing horrible is going to happen, some terrible story that it's going to follow sort of this plot that's pretty predictable, but I think in some ways that's actually kind of a good thing.
It's comforting.
And I think, absolutely.
That's the same reason people watch Hallmark movies every year, the Hallmark holiday movies. Like, you know the plot. That's okay. Like, you watch it because you know what to expect, and you want that kind of, you don't want to have to think. You know what I mean? And I think this is kind of like the Hallmark movies for teenagers.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's good for kids to have something that they can look up to and relate to, and so I hope that Disney continues to bring in a slew of younger fans and a younger audience, and hopefully with streaming that doesn't change, since people have so many freaking choices of what to watch. It's like I just don't even bother because it's just too overwhelming.
Yeah.
So
you just end up not watching anything.
Right. Yeah, it's like it took 3 hours to go through Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu and Amazon. Just forget it. I'm tired now.
Well, because you're always afraid that you're going to make the wrong choice, right? Like, because you have a choice, you don't want to make the wrong one. And there is no wrong choice. It's whatever you decide you want to watch. But, it's, same thing with, I mentioned this before, big video gamer. Like, I've got so many video games on my Nintendo Switch that, like, if I get bored 2 minutes in, I'm going to switch to another one. You know what I mean? And so that happens with movies too, where you just you you can move on, so you don't. I feel like that's like society these days. You know that you can always move on to something else, whether it's dating or it's a movie,
Swipe
whatever.
right.
You swipe right. That's like literally what the society we live in. And this is, these came out at a time where you didn't have a lot of choice. I mean, there were still a lot of choices back in the 90s to watch on TV, but, with Disney being what it was, like, that brand recognition kind of gave you, a good idea of what to expect. And, you watch these movies because, it was, still not nearly the choices you have these days. So
right. And there's nothing else to really be distracted by. And I think that's something,
that's the thing. You weren't staring at your phone going, okay, let's check Facebook while the movie's on, or what, I mean, you had commercials, as we talked about, where you could get up and go to the bathroom or whatever. But other than that, I mean, you were watching a movie and that's what you did. So, that came out at the right time. I think for the right. I think you and I are part of a generation that appreciated what. And I feel like everyone says this about their generation, but you and I are part of a generation that appreciated what it was like not to have so much choice to where it doesn't necessarily define who we are. In fact, in some ways, it's almost a hindrance because it drives you crazy because you don't want to make the wrong choice.
Right.
Whereas, I know like my kids, like they're going to grow up in a time when literally all they know is that they can change their minds in 5 seconds and try something else.
Right. So. Yeah, I think these are some of the probably movies the last time I was like fully present for something, not distracted by something. And I think a good way that our generation is described as having sort of a analog childhood and a
digital adulthood. Yeah. But you're absolutely right though. Like we grew up in a time period, an analog childhood, digital adulthood, so we appreciate both. And that's kind of that's why I call this Generation S. It's the in between Generation Y and Gen Zs, right? It's that in the middle where like you truly had a split, because I remember like my teenage years were the last era of like analog whatever, and then by the time I got to college, like no, it's all digital. So I feel like we adapted to digital very well, obviously, but at the same time I guarantee you I can go use a rotary phone right now to my kids' amazement.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, I'll never forget. I had to, when I was still working in education, a student needed to call home, and I think her phone had been like confiscated or something from her parents, and we were at a church where we had an after school thing, yada yada. But anyways, she had to call home, and there was the only thing that she could use was there was a rotary landline phone in the kitchen, and she looked at it and it looked like she was like, you know what I mean, like all of a sudden I don't know, a bunch of spiders were crawling all over the walls, or she was like what is this and what do I do? And she was very overwhelmed and very flustered. I'm like, okay, well, what's the first number? Okay, 9, roll it back. And she was like horrified that she had to do that. She had no clue.
Thought you're gonna have to. Might as well ask her to do Morse code or something.
Pretty much, yeah. Get the Pony Express, and your parents will know where you are in about 5 days, and you'll be fine. Yes. So I think we're nostalgic for that time because it was a time where we were present for it, and we remember a lot because we were so present. Right. Yeah.
Well, I remember, just as far as like calling home from school, like I remember a time where we would call collect because it was free and you didn't have a quarter for the payphone, and you would just say like, please state your name, and it'd be like, Mom, it's Dan, pick me up at school, bye. And then you just and then you hang up, and that was it.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I mean, totally did that because I didn't get a cell phone until I was in college, actually. Yeah. So you know what I mean. So I still had to call from usually an office phone or again a pay phone. Which you see those every once in a while, but pretty much nowhere.
Few and far between.
So
it usually looks like a crime at this point. Anytime I go past a payphone, looks like a crime scene or something. It's like, what in the heck happened over there? Because it's like ripped out of the cord's like ripped out. It's not pretty.
Graffiti all over it. It's it's just the truth. It's a forgotten. It's it's like seeing a Blockbuster video sign on an empty storefront. It's just
and then just one single tear.
That's right.
Comes down.
Relics of the past. So
it's true.
Listen, that's what this podcast is all about. That's what your podcast is all about. We are rehashing relics of the past. I like that. I'm gonna use that. Rehashing relics of the past.
You should absolutely.
Amy, let's give listeners a chance once again to find you on all the podcast channels. It is the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast, and the website is popcultureretrospective.com.
Yes, and that's kind of the easiest place because there's links to everything. My social media links are on there. Perfect. Links to the show on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and all that good stuff. So that's a great place to start. But yeah, certainly if you're enjoying the content of this show, which I'm sure you are because you're listening to it, feel free to come check out my show as well. I think you'll find there might be some overlap and maybe diving back a little bit later, farther back, and I do some stuff on the 80s too. So feel free to come check it out.
Well, and I think that's, again, what's great about all these different podcasts is that I could listen to 4 different podcasts talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and hear 4 totally different conversations.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't
Right.
matter if we've talked about Disney. You could go and do an episode on Disney Channel movies with another guest on your show,
Right.
and it's going to be totally different than this one is. And that's what's great, is that you're
Yes.
always going to hear a different perspective. Like, listen, there's only so many things that happened in the last 25 years. I totally get that, but
Yeah.
what's unique about that, and what's unique about you, the listener, is that you had your own experiences with these that sometimes may intersect with what other people did, and that's kind of the goal
Right.
of my podcast. But like, no, like, everyone's experience was different, so that's what's great about having all these things that you can go and listen to and watch, because you can relive your own experiences and hear about how other people in the world lived through what you did. So
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And that's what we did today with Disney Channel, man. It was a good time. So
Yes.
Amy, thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun, and I totally want to have you on again in the future.
Yeah.
If you don't, yeah. So
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Sign me up. I'd
Yes.
be happy to join. And you have a fantastic show. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a guest. I don't just like, I'll just go on who's ever show. That's fine. I always make sure to either I'm familiar with it and have listened to it because I'm a huge podcast listener and fan myself, because that's how it kind of got into all this. And your show is fantastic. So thank you for what you do and put out there. And I'm happy to come and be back on the show.
absolutely, and likewise, and certainly would love to come back on your show as well in the
Yes.
future. We'll just we'll figure out what we talk about.
Yes, as I like to say, the train needs to continue to pull into Collaboration Station, because
There it is.
It's
Yep.
a good place to be. It's awesome. So this has been a blast.
Collaboration Station. I love
Yes.
that. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening. As I mentioned, always make sure you like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Make sure you're telling your friends about the show. Shout out Ashley again. Ashley is a champ when it comes to shouting out the podcast in her own personal network. So make sure you do the same, guys. And if you can, this is a little extra step, but God, it means so much to me and my ability to get this show out there, is leave a review. If you're on Spotify, leave the star reviews. I don't care. You don't have to do. I'd love it if you did 5 stars, but do whatever you feel is, what you think of the show. Leave a review on iTunes, because what that does is that gets us exposed. Like, there's like a nostalgia category, I'm sure, in iTunes where shows show up. So in order for me to get more visibility and get to more listeners that would love this show, leave a review. That helps. Every little bit helps. Make sure you're checking us out on YouTube. We've got some great stuff on there, as I talked about earlier. And
and a great YouTube channel. And it's not just a stuff that's from your podcast episodes. I mean, it's like individual things on topics, and it's so well done and so interesting. And you have such a great voice that's so soothing to listen to, so if you ever want to go into like, reading audiobooks or something, I think there's a future in that for you as well. But it's a great channel. Yeah.
Appreciate that. That's I'm blushing now. Thank you.
Yes.
Now. Awesome, guys. Well,
Gratification Station. That's the next stop.
Gratification Station. There it is. We're hitting all the stops here.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening once again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Goodbye.